of one. Azura, Lechunaran Nala Adonai Naria Litzur Yishenu. Come, let us sing to God. Let us shout joyfully to the rock of our salvation. This is a song that we know, of course, the beginning of Kabbalat Shabbat. It's the one that we sing to God, that we praise God, and it begins where with the idea that God is, well, let's see. Now we're just inviting people to go and pray. Let us go, come together as the beginning, similar to, right? We bow for Baruch Hu. What is Baruch Hu? Baruch Hu is an invitation in Tefillah to come into to praise God, to come and to bless God. And this L'chuna Ranana is a similar one. Here it's not Baruch Hu, let us bless God. Here it is, let us sing to God, which is why it makes sense at the beginning of Kabbalat Shabbat, which is prayers of singing and devotion and joy and happiness that begin at the beginning of Shabbat. There are already allusions to Kabbalat Shabbat in the Gemara, where it talks about they would go out to the fields with Hadassim and they would sing to God. And of course, it became much more of what we know it today in the late 16th century in Svat, where the great Kabbalistic circles would go out into the field. So they invite us, we're invited to go and pray and to sing joyfully to God. Let us come before him with thanksgiving. Let us raise our voice in song, right? God is coming down, as it were, on Shabbat. The Shekhinah of God, as it were, is coming down to the earth. And so before God gets here, let's go out and greet him. Ki el gadol Adonai melech gadol al kol elohim. For God is great, and the great King is above all gods. Spoken about this many times, this image, mythic image, this idea of many gods, but our God is the supreme God, not something that we believe is monotheist, but the image, Asher biado mechkerei aretz v'to'afot harimlo. In God's hands are the deep places of the earth, and the mountain peaks belong to him. So from the depths to the heights, from the top of Mount Everest down to the bottom of the Dead Sea, God is up and God is down. God is everywhere. God controls everything that is on the earth. So you want to go up on top of the mountain, pray to him, God will be there. You want to go down to the depths, you want to go into a cave down below the earth and pray to God. God is in control of all of it from top to bottom. Asher lo hayam v'hu asahu v'yabeshet yadav yatzaru. To whom the sea belongs, he made it, his hands formed the dry land. So let us come and bend the knee. Let us kneel before the God, our maker and creator. So, right, this is obedience to God in these chapters. We're bowing down to God, is what's being said here in this verse here. Let us bow down to God, and this is the God who is the creator of everything. That's what we've established so far. Now we go from the God of creation, the God who controls everything, from the tops to the bottoms, from the north to the south, the quote unquote four corners of the earth. Hu Eloheinu, va'anachnu am marito v'tzon yado hayom im bikolo tishma'u. He is our God and we are his people. We are the flock of his hand. If we listen to God's voice. Now we are God's flock and we listen to him. But like the generation in the desert who didn't listen, who ran away, which we're about to see even further, right? They didn't listen to God. We're told to listen to God. If you want to be God's flock, if you want to follow in the right path, we'll see that in a second. I'm sort of foreshadowing to the next verse, but think about how they had to meander, how they wander in the desert for 40 years, and we're being told not to. Look at verse 8. Al tikshu levavchem kumriva kiyom masa bamidbar. Don't harden your heart as the Jews did in Merivah, where the Jews rebelled against God, where they tested God in the wilderness. Asher nasuni avotechem bechanuni gam ra'u po'ali. When your fathers tried me and tested me, although they saw my deeds. So we don't see God's deeds in the same way that they did, and yet they tested. We're told not to test God. We're told to follow in God's way and to not walk in a different path, to follow God's way. Not always so easy to do so. Not always so easy, but here we're coming out and we're showing, as opposed to them who did not follow God, what is being told to do in this chapter. We're going out and greeting God. We're going to the front before God gets there, before God's Shekhinah comes down for Shabbat. We're going to go out into the fields to greet God in his apple orchard. We're going to greet God in the field. So we're sort of trying to be mitakein, to fix that mistake that was done in the generation that wouldn't follow. We don't have to just follow. We will go out and meet God. 40 years I hated that generation in the desert. They were a people who were mistaken in the heart. They did not know my ways. We talk at length for a different time about that generation and the difficulties of being in that generation, a generation of trauma, a generation that went through slavery and the difficulty of, right, 1865, when you've been enslaved your whole life. It's not so easy to all of a sudden become a free man. So they get maligned in the texts and maligned in many, many places, but it's not an easy transition. And of course, we know it post the Holocaust. There were many Jews who came out of the fires of Auschwitz and lived wonderful, normal lives and impressive lives, and others who were shells of themselves. So it's not a simple thing that that generation is oftentimes scolded for. But continuing the last verse, therefore I swore in my anger that they would not enter my resting place. Here in this chapter, right, they saw the miracles, and so the way that it's understood is they should have been able to transcend their quote unquote upbringing, their difficulty, their trauma. Now we know it's not such an easy thing to do, but the key thing in this chapter, we think of this chapter, we sing it at the beginning of Friday night, right? That generation didn't follow God. How are we going to fix it? Not are we going to follow God, but we're going to go out and greet God. We're going to be there before God gets there, in a sense, in a similar way. If we think about it as a wedding and the custom that many people have, when the bride walks out, and we'll say 3/4, 4/5 down the way, that the chatan goes down off from underneath the chuppah, and sometimes goes down a few steps or whatever it is, and leads or together walks with his kala into under the chuppah, that they walk together. The parents either walk in front or walk behind or whatever it might be. But the groom says, we're going to be married. I'm going to walk together with you. And that's what we say to God in this chapter. We're not going to be like that. We're not going to not just follow you. We're going to come out. We're going to greet you. And we are going to walk together.